It's 2014, and so far it has been a very decent year. I just recently graduated from Western Connecticut State University with a bachelor's degree in theater arts. But the one thing that has been the main focus of this whole year, at least for me, is that it's the 30th anniversary of my number one favorite movie of all time, Ghostbusters. Yes, Ghostbusters, a $30 million movie that has grossed almost $300 million worldwide, making it the most successful comedy ever made before it was eclipsed by Home Alone. As it turns out, Ghostbusters was a bigger success in America than in other countries. While I'm recording this, Ghostbusters is currently playing on big screens in celebration of 30 years of paranormal investigation and elimination. Later this year, a Blu-ray will be released alongside its equally successful sequel, and jam-packed with bonus features. But the reason why I'm here is to celebrate Ghostbusters in my own way. I'm here to explain why I have such a love for a 30-year-old movie that has a mixture of comedy and horror. I call this editorial, Why I'm Obsessed with Ghostbusters. One thing that has to be pointed out was that Ghostbusters was never intended to be a kids' movie. The film's director, Ivan Reitman's last film was an R-rated military comedy, Stripes. Yet somehow we as younger viewers took a huge liking to this film. We've all been fascinated or terrified with ghost stories and horrors that lurk in the dark. So the first time I was introduced to this film, I was never aware that what I was looking at was a comedy. In fact, Ghostbusters is one of those movies that doesn't say flat out that it's a comedy. It looks more like a science fiction action film with a little bit of horror thrown in. The film received a PG rating when it could have gotten a PG-13 rating. But around that time, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom had just came out, and on the same day Ghostbusters opened, Joe Dante's Gremlins featured scenes that were responsible for the creation of the PG-13 rating. The first movie to get that rating was John Milius's Red Dawn, released in August of 1984. There are some viewers who mix up which genre Ghostbusters really belongs in. Some classify it as science fiction, some classify it as a horror film, but the truth is, I have never classified Ghostbusters to be a horror movie. I always saw it as a supernatural comedy, the likes of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, or Spookbusters. When people ask me why I love this movie more than all the other movies in the world, my usual response is that I love the story. The idea that there would be a profession much like firefighting, except it's ghost busting. That just goes back to our fascination with ghost stories and the things that lurk in the dark that scare us. The other reason I bring up is my love for the characters. You've got the comedy masters Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Harold Ramis working together in the same movie. They all got their start on Second City, SCTV, or Saturday Night Live, and are wonderful at improvisation and coming up with things that aren't in the script and make it so memorable. Much like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Ghostbusters have similar character traits. Dan Aykroyd's character, Ray Stantz, is the heart of the Ghostbusters. He essentially is like the big kid, much like Michelangelo. He's energetic and has a keen sense of fun of whatever happens. Bill Murray is Peter Venkman, the mouth of the Ghostbusters. Much like Raphael, he's like a smartass and is always the one spitting out one-liners. He doesn't take the supernatural seriously and is a tremendous womanizer. Harold Ramis, who sadly passed away on February of this year, plays Egon Spangler, the brains of the Ghostbusters. He's always the one who speaks technobabble and is always the one developing the equipment that they use. So essentially he's like Donatello. Later in the film, we get Ernie Hudson as Winston Zeddemore. Basically, he's the everyman, the one who's laid back and trying to make sense out of all this. So in some capacity, he's like Leonardo. The only difference between the two characters is that Leonardo is a leader. At one point on a Twitter viewing party of Ghostbusters, I paraphrased a comment that Dan Aykroyd said comparing the characters of Ghostbusters to the characters of The Wizard of Oz. I said that Egon was the Scarecrow, Ray was the Tin Man, and Peter was the Cowardly Lion. Someone had asked me, that would make Winston Dorothy? I simply responded that technically Winston was the everyman, and like Dorothy or Luke Skywalker or Harry Potter or Frodo, they too are considered the every-person archetype. This was Sigourney Weaver's 5th movie and her first motion picture comedy, and it was nice to see that there was more to her than just a badass action hero like she played in Ridley Scott's Alien. Rick Moranis replaced John Candy as Louis Tully. Moranis is by far the funniest actor in this film next to Bill Murray. One thing I find kind of humorous is the fact that when he's possessed, he is the Keymaster. Yet, on 3 separate occasions, he's constantly locked out of his apartment. Good twist of irony, if I do say so myself. Annie Potts as the secretary Janine is the straight man archetype for the Ghostbusters. Very deadpan in humor and is almost always serious. There was to be more of a romantic attachment between Janine and Egon, but it was almost a separate movie. Last of the major cast members is William Atherton as the EPA agent Walter Peck, the human enemy of the Ghostbusters. He's a character you kind of sympathize because he's concerned about the safety of the public, yet everybody is putting their reliance on a team that barely knows how to operate their own equipment and never even bothered to test it. Yet he's still an asshole for what he does, like shutting down the containment grid. But it's always fun to see him get his just desserts at the end, no pun intended.